so you have flocks without shepherds. And at the same time, there's great growth in conversions in churches. There's not the same growth in the number of leaders, and so you have flocks without shepherds. Who's going to disciple the pastors?
And God brings Stacy and Mentorlink with just that vision, just those tools. And we wanted each of these evangelists to have the opportunity to be mentored by a more experienced evangelist or pastor, but we didn't have the tools for communicating the vision and for giving people even an idea of how this would work. It was, in my mind, an incredible divine appointment, because here we are in Colombia wanting to see younger evangelists mentored, not knowing how we can communicate this vision and these tools to experienced pastors. And God brings Stacy and Mentorlink with just that vision, just those tools.
Everywhere in the world, we were having mass conversions. Lots and lots of people coming to Christ. Phenomenal growth in the number of churches. And while those were growing exponentially in terms of numbers, the ability to produce leaders was growing incrementally. And so over time, you had an increasing shortfall of just the numbers. Beyond that, you had the issue of Christ-likeness. Who's going to disciple the pastors?
When I was told that report, I was just so excited to realize that what will happen when you've got one person really committed to this whole thing of mentoring. It's interesting how the mentoring continues to grow, and I see it as a movement. But one of these pastors that he was mentoring within the organization that he works in, this pastor then went out and started mentoring people within his church and seeing great results of the elders in his church. He himself doing it, not the core pastor who I worked with, but 1 to 2 to 3. You know, the 2 Timothy 2:2 principle. But this same individual has expanded it so much that beyond his church, he has even had involvement in one of the arms of the Philippine military. And they having changes taking place in their lives as well. And that moving on into the lives of other military people. When I was told that report, I was just so excited to realize that what will happen when you've got one person really committed to this whole thing of mentoring.
Leaders who lead like Jesus will come from using the methodology of Jesus, which is a mentoring model. So I began to realize that this person, Jesus, had a different leadership model than mine. And whereas Jesus' way of leadership is really the way of developing relationships and developing character in the context of growing in ministry.
Not just transmitting content and Bible knowledge, but actually life on life, sharing experiences, encouraging one another, getting into the Word together, praying with one another. We think this is going to be foundational to what we're doing as a church.
He didn't go after the position and the perks and the power and the titles and the ranks. He went after a different thing in the hearts of his leaders. Everywhere we go in the culture, in the world, we see that the church has adopted the power model of the culture around us. Now, I first saw this in Russia, that the pastors were operating like communist dictators in their churches, right? That's what you saw. Well, that's not unique. You go to Latin America, Steve, what do we call it? Latino dictator? The Caudillo leader? Well, if you've been to Africa and you watch how it works in Africa, they're African chieftains. So then you go to China, and the Chinese said, well, no, what you're talking about is the Mandarin, the Chinese Mandarin, the great power leader. And in India, it's the Indian guru who's way removed in a way. It's not the way of the culture around us. But you got to learn to move away from the flesh and move to Jesus. And that does not come by reading a book. It comes by constant steps of repentance